beginning of the Shanghai Shek
Yeah.
Revolution against
And the
all
coolies, how terribly they treated them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that movie was an extra long movie, so instead of ending at 11, I think it ended closer to midnight.
Oh,
And then
yeah?
they usually have a short afterwards, and they had this really intriguing discussion about this indie film.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out it was called Barney's Version. And it had, what's the name of the actor, the scruffy one? The one who played John Adams.
Sit outside.
Oh, Giametti?
Yeah,
I forget his-
Giacometti, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it had him,
Yeah.
and then it had, his father was played by, oh God, the Tootsie guy,
Dustin Hoffman?
Dustin Hoffman.
Uh-huh.
And-
Very good.
Yeah, and it had, who else was in there?
It was an interesting movie. It kept us,
Yeah, well, I kept waiting for it to end, though, it was really too long.
but we found out that it was 3 o'clock then. So,
Well, actually.
and then they were
2:30.
going to show a
Well,
short.
it's pretty late.
Exactly,
Yeah.
so by the time I was in bed, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Once I saw a short there that I recommend still very highly. It's called Arranged.
Yeah?
Did you ever get to see it?
No?
Well, you ought to see if you
It's-
can
it's
rent
on
it
the
and get it.
internet.
It's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Really good.
It's about two women who become friends, and one is
Pearl,
Muslim,
would you
one
be
is
good enough?
Orthodox Jewish.
Would you
And
be
they
good enough
arranged
to
it.
take
It's
out
about their weddings.
the blackberries?
Yes, sure.
You notice it's my second or third request.
Was it?
Was it?
Yeah,
I
Really?
didn't notice. I was busy doing things. I did not
I
hear you.
know. But you're always busy doing things.
Where are the blackberries hiding? Are they
Oh,
on top
they're,
here?
yes, they're right there.
These?
They're from
Well,
Bruce's garden, and he
yeah.
brought them.
The ones on the bottom?
They're the ones on the bottom.
It's hard to find things in my
Okay.
refrigerator.
Oh, I see. Here
He
you go.
brought these yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Very nice. Would you like one?
All right, I'll try one.
And they've got undertone of tartness, but
Mm.
generally they're sweet.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Thank you. Have a piece. Have one.
I think their mouths will not fit that
Oh,
now.
don't tell me when they're too full.
I'm not talking about too full, I'm talking about flavor.
Oh, flavor.
Those are tartar than that, and they have
Yeah.
very delicious sweet melon, and that will make
Well,
these not.
they can contrast them on their own.
No, it will make them not like it.
Make them suffer.
Suffer.
Yeah.
Maybe a little later.
Gives you a sense of power when you can take your tongue and squeeze the juice out of them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm
A
gonna
little universe.
silence this thing.
Juice out.
Yeah, right. That's the other thing you wanted to do.
Do
Right.
everything because of this 4-inch display.
Where is Abby?
I'm gonna do
Abby's,
that now.
she's
Relaxing?
in,
She's
yes,
on the phone.
she's on the phone.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, my hands are sticky.
You know, my chair can be used as a seat. I
Yeah.
mean, that black one.
Oh, the walker.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's part of going through books. Oh, no, the one with the
Yeah, that's.
seeds, that's all. That's the seeds. And then it goes right in here.
Thanks, man.
Well, yeah.
I'm just gonna rinse it out.
No, I'm gonna wash it. And Belle does not have a suction for the dishwasher.
Mhm.
So, it's right off and stack it. Very good.
Okay.
Okay.
Face recognition.
Yeah, you see the little square going?
What?
There's a little square on the
your
viewfinder
face.
that flashes on your face because it's telling me that it focuses there. See? So
Is
you're
this
in
the first time
focus.
you brought the tripod?
No, I brought the tripod last week, right?
Oh, why was it having such trouble focusing?
Not last week it didn't. When I
Oh.
was holding it in my hand, it had
Yeah,
trouble.
that's probably why.
All right. So, what are we going to talk about? What
I
are
have
we-
no idea.
Well,
I don't know where we left off or what, or were we doing it in any particular order?
I remember we talked about your wedding and
My wedding.
Your wedding, yes, and what else? We looked at that journal. We had
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that was really great stuff. Uh,
And about my going to school, I think.
yes,
that was
that's
before,
right.
And your job, your first
And-
job.
And your first job, right? We did cover some ground, right?
Yeah, you talked about it all.
So,
If you want to hear another thing about job hunting,
okay.
I looked for jobs everywhere,
Mhm.
and I think there was something in the newspaper about a job opening in Vogue magazine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I applied for it, and I got up there for an interview, and all went very well. In fact, she was introducing me to the secretaries and the different people in the department, in Vogue, Vogue magazine. I don't know which section of it it was, but there it was. And then at the very last minute, she turned to me and she said, "You're not Jewish, are you?" So I was so taken aback, and I had such a terrible. I really can feel the chest pain that I had when she asked me that question.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed the job I wanted, but so I was just ashamed of my answer. I said, "I'm half Jewish," and I was really very ashamed when I said that. And but I said it, and she said, "Well," I went down. There was no job, and that was my first crack at through anti-Semitism right in your face. And I went downstairs, back to the lobby in the street, and I felt I could cut my head off.
Yeah.
I was so ashamed of my response.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted a job, so you do
Well,
all kinds of things.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeez. It's surprising that it would be, I guess, what year was that? When was that?
Must have been in the 1930s,
Yeah.
because that's when I graduated from college. It was a 31, and I was looking for, jobs. We used to go looking, I told you, in Macy's and all the department stores had people lined up to get any kind of a job, a packer or a whatnot. And that's how we ate our lunches. I told you, Macy's had that lovely tasting department in there. They had a big basement downstairs where they had all kinds of foods, fresh foods and stuff, even quail eggs and stuff. And they had portions that they, like they have at Trader Joe's, they offer you little snips and snacks. So we used to fill a little paper dish with whatever we could pick up, and that usually was our lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Wow. That's a good way to get lunch.
what?
It's a good way to get lunch.
Yes, it's a good way to get lunch. You don't have,
Oh,
mostly
go
because
ahead.
you don't have to pay for
Push
it.
this in.
Excuse me, I want to go sit down.
So,
It's fun being a little man.
Mm-hmm.
oh,
Yeah.
So, how are the early years of married life for you?
that was the story. I got married, and my honeymoon was we got married December 25th.
Right.
Because that was the only day free. Will was still going to school. He was going to graduate in June, and he was the first Benedict of his class. He was the one who got married. So, and we had a very nice wedding. Everything was, did I tell you about
Yes.
it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You told us.
And,
later.
And we looked at the wedding. We saw
Yeah.
you set up a
Yeah, and
budget
then when
and you
we-
wrote down every expense for
Yeah.
the first year.
And then we decided that in 1940, I think it was, we would take a real vacation, 'cause I had, a vacation coming, and Will was finished with school then. He
Right.
had graduated then. So we didn't have a car, and Evelyn, cousin Evelyn, had a car, and she said she would like to go on vacation with us, just like a 2-week thing, and we drive up to see the canyons. I had never seen the canyons, like Harrow's Canyon, caverns.
Oh, House Caverns.
Yeah,
Right.
I had never seen anything like that, and she said, "Oh, they're very beautiful," and we were all planning to do that, and then all of a sudden she said, she said, you've seen one cavern, you've seen them all, so I didn't feel that way, but she did, and it was her car, so she said, "I'm not going to take the trip. That's all, So there we were, stranded. So Will somehow found a Model T Ford, the kind with a mother-in-law seat in the back.
Right.
But you
The
open-
rumble seat.
The rumble seat. You open the thing and the little seats there. So I think he paid $5 for it. That was a good buy, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty
And
good.
we had that. I had a whole booklet of pictures, photos that we took, and I don't know where they are. There must be someplace in the. We looked in one of the drawers, Pearl, didn't we?
We weren't looking specifically for that, but, so I don't know.
Anyway, I had a whole pile of them, and we printed them up ourselves. We were interested in developing
Right.
pictures, and we printed them up ourselves. They were on oblong pieces of paper, but photo paper, and we made the picture square, a pretty large square, and then the rest of it was going to be so that we could bind them in a book, the white part. And we have a lot of pictures of that trip. And we went by ourselves, and we had a wonderful time. I remember we went straight up north to Vermont and through the fruit country, and it was such a thrill to be able to just pick your ripe fruits from the tree, and did they taste delicious. Very different from any of the fruit we had before. And we took our first airplane ride. There was a flying field where they were, giving, not free, but rides for a minute or 2 minutes, whatever. And they put on a flying show, and then you could have a ride. So we took a ride in that little plane, a tiny plane. And we never thought of any of the danger of flying up there. We just went. And it was really nice, thrilling. We came down, that was one of the things we did. And then we continued into Vermont. And I remember we stopped at a little place like I wouldn't grace it with the name of restaurant, but it was sort of, like a county place to eat. And I asked if they had a bathroom. And they said, "Oh yes, right out back." And I walked out the back door, and there was the open outdoors. They had an outhouse a little further back. It was my first experience with an outhouse. It was okay, once you got used to the smell. So we were there. And for amusement, I think we played cards all the way there and back. And we went to Montreal and all that. We enjoyed it very, very much.
Yeah, I still have that a pin.
Hmm?
I have a pin that you gave Mom.
Oh yeah, that I put.
Yeah, the little porcelain
And
pin.
well, we didn't have much money for buying presents or anything, but anyway. And on the way back, when we were in motel rooms, our pleasure was to play, what do you call it, cards. What we play, what's the card game you play?
Yeah, poker?
No, not poker, just the two of us. Oh,
Yeah.
you get 7 cards. Rummy.
Rummy.
Okay.
Okay.
Rummy. Do you know that game?
No, I've never played Rummy.
Oh, that's a nice game. And anyway, and what happened was that I wound up owing Will about $1 million.
Really?
Yeah, so, which had to be collected and trade, that's all. I had no money to pay him. So we got back home, and that was the end of our trip, but it was delightful. It was so lovely. Then we were busy developing all the films and so on. And because I worked for Women's Wear and Daily News Record, I got slips from my company so that I could go into various factories on the way up. Like they had Pep- Pepperidge Mills was on the way up, and some other, all various factories in Connecticut and so on. So we went to those places, and I'll never forget how impressed I was with the noises of a factory. Oh, it was so noisy, and the machines thumping and thumping, and the way they had blankets. They were making these big blankets, and the blankets came out on the loom, and they were like hard pieces of cloth with designs on them. But then they had a special machine with little things coming up, and they on rollers, that were all spiked with spikes, I guess. And then they put that dry, thin piece of wool on that, and it fluffed. It went on these rollers, and it came out looking fluffy and lovely like a regular blanket. That should look. And that one made a big impression on me. So we went there, and we went to several other factories. I think the Waltham Watch Company, and some other places like that. It was very, very interesting. And some places with tremendous turbans and stuff, which Will liked. And that was it.
So that was your honeymoon trip.
Yeah, which we had never had. So our honeymoon trip was, when we actually got married, we had 3 days off, and we went to shows. We saw, the ILGWU put on a show of pins and needles. That was very, very interesting, very, very fun. And
Is that where the song "Look for the Union Label" came from?
That's right.
Was it in that show?
Yep.
Wow.
It was a political
It's
show.
like a Broadway show.
Mm-hmm.
It was really great.
Hmm.
And what else? Because I was sort of more or less involved with the labor movement,
Mhm.
And as a matter of fact, when I was in high school, that was the time that people were expressing their political views, and you belonged to the YCL, which is the Young Communist League, or other things, and we used to march in the May Day marches. It was very very lively and fun. And but not so great at a certain time of our lives when Will was established, and he got himself a city job with the Department of Transportation as some kind of an engineering thing, I think, for drawing stuff. And I remember Uncle Nat was astonished that we were getting married. We had so little money, and that's why I told him, look, my salary is $22.50 because I had gotten a raise, and his salary was also, when you broke it down over the weeks, over the year, they paid the yearly things, and so it was also $22.50. So I said, look, we have $45 a month. And the rent that we were paying was, I forget how much, but it was just about that. And I read somewhere that your rent should be a quarter of what your income is. And so we figured we were doing well. And that's the way it was. And so that was our honeymoon. And then we took this extended vacation, which was also like a honeymoon. And then we decided to have children. We thought we'd please the old folks by giving them grandchildren. And Will said he was in favor, but he really wanted, the first one was for him, he said. And he wanted a girl. That's it, just a girl. The rest, he said, you can have all the rest. So Harriet was Daddy's girl. And I was a very good wife, so I presented him with a girl, right?
So he must have been pleased.
What?
He must have been pleased.
Very pleased, very
Mhm.
pleased. But except I inconvenienced the family because I didn't go to the hospital. I had a couple of false things, and then finally I went to the hospital, and there was what was the name of that guy who was very funny? He's the one who made up all these weather reports. Sleet and snow followed by sleds.
Oh, Henry Morgan.
That's right, Henry Morgan. He was
Yeah.
so funny, and I was really addicted to listening to that radio show. And I remember I wouldn't go to the hospital that Friday until I heard his show.
You have to have your priorities straight.
That's right. And then I went, and I had this other friend of ours, one of Bill's engineering friends who graduated with him, Maxie Gordon, who drove us to we didn't have a car then, so he drove us to our wedding. And
And you don't mean to you.
What?
You back to your wedding, or you're talking about going into labor?
no, I'm saying Maxie Gordon's wife, we were very friendly, and she was pregnant at the same time as I was, and she went to the same doctor as I, Dr. Hauptman,
Mhm.
and we both walked to Coney Island together to make it easier to dislodge our babies, and then we
How does that work?
just a lot of exercise.
I
That's
see.
what the
They
doctor
recommend-
told me
they
to do,
recommend
because I was
walking. Oh.
I was 3 weeks late.
I
And I
see.
found out that that's a family trait, being late. So afterwards, but so we
Just
both
as far
walked-
as pregnancies go, or for all things?
no. And that's why we walked to Coney Island, and we were even thinking of taking a parachute ride, but we were discouraged from that.
Hmm.
We felt the sudden drop would help.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, we came down, and we both went into labor about the same day. So he had his hands full, because they said he never heard such screamers in his life. So, I mean, they weren't too generous with drugs or anything. And they gave me, I remember, what do you call it, castor oil. Oh my God! And they try to make it palatable by mixing it with orange juice. I didn't taste oranges for a long time after I got finished having the baby. And, and I remember walking up and down with this olive oil and stuff in my stomach, and it was disgusting. And then finally it went into labor, and I had Harriet, and it was taking a very long time. And finally the doctor had to use the forceps and remove her. And the family was waiting at home because I couldn't have a baby at a reasonable hour, So they were fast asleep, and he was supposed to let them know what happened. And at that time, they didn't invite the husbands to come in and help, or be anybody helpful. So all he could do, by that time, I think we had a little car, and he got his car and he rode around and rode. He was looking for balsa wood, piece of balsa wood that I could squeeze, because that's very soft wood. Anyway, he came back, and by the time he came back, I had given birth to baby. But he noticed that the bed was pushed up high, blocks under it, because there had been a great deal of bleeding, and that's what they did. And the whole bed was raised up to the back, so the foot was higher than your head. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's tilted back.
Yeah, tilted back. And then I was so thrilled because he brought me an orchid. The first orchid I ever had. And it was just wonderful. So, and then we decided, and the doctor said, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, shall I call the family? So I said, yes, I've been going through all this while I keep them sleeping. So that's when we called.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it,
Yeah.
We came home and we had all the appurtenances. We had a nurse. You had to have a nurse for a week. That was the style. First of all, you stayed in the hospital for a week. They figured that your body had been through a lot and it needed a week's rest in bed, which was really very nice. And they don't do that nowadays.
No.
Nowadays you have the baby and you're thrown out. So, anyway, there I was. And she was very nice. But she sort of took over. We didn't feel that Harriet was our baby until she left, because she did everything and she didn't let me learn or do anything myself. And the first night I remember Harriet was in this bassinet, pearls bassinet, which I had decorated with pieces of my wedding gown. It was really very pretty. And
She means bassinet, I slept in.
it was the middle of the night, maybe about 4 o'clock or so. And all of a sudden we hear this peep from Harriet, a little like a cry. And we didn't know what to do. So we both said, shh. And she shut up. I don't know what that did to her psyche, but that's the way it was. So,
And
And then it was
how about when Bruce came along? How was that?
well, that was fine, except that the same thing happened. That my doctor Dr. Hartman was in the Army. Had been drafted to serve in the Army. And so we had to go looking for another doctor. And somebody recommended one, so we hired this doctor. And he was, I didn't have very good confidence in him somehow. I just didn't have good feelings about him. And Will sensed it, and he asked me, do you feel comfortable with him? I said, really, no, I don't. And my cousin Harriet had a very good doctor up in a hospital in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one all the way up on First Avenue, or was it Fifth Avenue, one of these big hospitals there, Mount Sinai or something. And I remember we went there, and Will called to make the appointment. And he said, how far gone is your wife? He said, well, she's 3 weeks overdue. He said, oh my God, bring her right away. So we went there, and they examined me. They were very humane, very nice. They put me to sleep with something called twilight sleep. It was known as that in those days. And I went to sleep with sweet dreams, and I kept dreaming about waking up I was going to be in a green room. And so I remember waking up and saying, am I in the green room? And then nobody knew what I was talking about, But it was a very nice hospital, and they treated me well. And there was Bruce, and we had to have a bris, and it was very, but we didn't make a big thing. What we did was in the hospital, they do it, the doctors there do it. And so we didn't have a party or anything up there. And we just had the ceremony, that was it. And then when we got home, I think they had a little party for the family, because there was a tradition called something about passing the son along, because Will was of the tribe of the
Levi.
of the what?
Levi?
No, we were of the Levi
Oh.
tribe, and he was of the common people's tribe, the Israelis.
Oh,
Yeah. So they had to have somebody from a higher sect, like a Levi, who would do this whole business of the Pinyon HaBen, they'd call it, something like that. And they had to have that. So we had that at home, and of course you have to make a little party for the family to come, and you go down to Rustin Brothers, and you get some Rustin daughters.
Rustin daughters,
And,
yes. That
and
part
you
I
get
know.
all that kind of stuff, so that's what they did. They got all that stuff, and it was a little party. And we had people coming up to the house, to celebrate and congratulate us and all that. And Harriet was very miffed. She thought having Bruce was the worst idea in the world.
Especially since he came with a party.
What?
I said, especially since he came with a party for him.
Yes, and she said, you never made a party for me, and you made a party for Bruce. How come? So that's because I thought I had progressive ideas at the time, and I thought that children under the age of 3 don't appreciate it. They don't know what a party is about. It's really for the family. And so I figured I could wait until she was about 3 or 4 to make a real party that she could understand, and all that. By that time she'd have friends and so on. So that's what we did. And I remember we had such a nice party for her. Harriet, Pearl and I made decorations, and do you remember that?
No, I really don't.
We made such pretty decorations for her, and then we had a big table that was covered with the party stuff, and we like, got her a crown. And I have a picture, I think, of her sitting at the top of at the head of the table with the crown with a star on it, and she looked adorable, you know. And I think she enjoyed it. And I think at the time there was chicken pox going around, so we called it a chicken pox party. If you had chicken pox, you could come, but if you didn't have chicken pox, you had to stay away, because we had a lot of kids in our building, and it was a
Yes,
lovely
everybody
party.
was having chicken pox.
And for entertainment, Will got old reels of the Charlie Chaplin films. And the kids had such a great time watching the films. And then after the kids were asleep and the parents, well, some of the parents had gone home, we stayed and he showed the movies backwards, and it was hilarious. Do you remember the one where he's eating his boot?
Mhm.
Do you know those films?
I don't think he has
I've
yet.
heard of them, but
Oh, you ought to get to see them.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
so funny, really.
He just saw his first Marx Brothers movie.
Oh, they're funny, but Charlie Chaplin was really superior. Just as he didn't utter a sound. He just was a silent clown. He was wonderful. Just like the one who played Tati, the French guy.
Marcel.
Or
Marcel
you're talking about in the
Marceau?
Pink Panther movies?
No, he's
No.
talking about Marcel,
Yeah.
Oh, the mime?
the mime.
Yeah, on the mime, yeah.
Because that was Charlie Chaplin's.
That was
Those
Charlie
were silent.
Chaplin's style.
Oh,
you know.
sure, right.
Yeah.
But he thought of such funny situations, you have no idea, really funny. And they were all physical, you know, nothing you had to think about.
Yeah, pratfalls.
Although he
There's
also
that.
wrote that song, Smile.
What?
He wrote the song Smile, Charlie
Did he?
Chaplin.
Did he?
Yeah, Smile though your heart is breaking, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that was Charlie
Well,
Chaplin.
he was the sad clown, you know.
Mhm.
His heart was always breaking. People was doing things to him.
Yes, he did. What was
I
the
didn't
name?
know
What
he
was
wrote
the
that
name of the
song.
one where he had the blind girl, the blind florist?
Yeah,
Mm.
That was a small feature like the Gold Rush was.
Uh-huh.
and then do you remember the feature film that he made in the factory?
Oh, yes, Modern Times?
Modern Times, yeah.
Oh, that was hilarious.
Mhm.
I still remember the people who were working on those machines.
With the
and they were
monkey
doing-
wrenches.
And when he walked outside, he was going like that.
Yeah.
It was so good. So we had a good time watching his films backwards, which were even funnier than forwards. And that was it. And
I think
it was hard work because, and then Will got so involved in working in the development of speakers and stuff. And at one time the living room was filled with wires, very thin wires, coils of wires all over the place. And you know, that's what I had to contend with. You know.
Mhm.
But, and we tried to make extra money with taking the photographs of the children, children everywhere. We took pictures of our children and enlarged them because we used to work in the bathroom in the other house. But when we moved here, which was when Harriet started first grade, well, she was 7, I think, and that was more than first grade. And Bruce was in kindergarten.
Well,
I
you were
think.
here for a short while. when
What?
she- I said you were here for a short while she was an infant.
Yeah, but then that's when we wanted to buy a house. Because Little Phelps was a little cramped. I mean, we were, the family was here, which was nice. And I think my mom was heartbroken when we moved out. But, he felt sort of stuffed, cramped. So we,
Wasn't there, didn't Will and Dad have a little business together, the Stati Mute or
No,
something like that?
That was, well,
I
no, that was your
misremembered.
father.
That was just Dad on his own?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought Will was involved. I guess not. It's just another hi-fi product.
Yeah, it's just another high five product.
Will was with, I remember the Robbins, Frank Robbins. I remember going to, we somehow visited Frank
That
Robbins.
made the R&J,
The RJ?
Robbins. Well, that was much later on.
Oh, okay. I mean, he was doing speakers before that.
He was always interested in sound equipment, always,
Mm-hmm.
you know. He even had one of those things where you dial other people from along other places, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
I mean, like a radio,
Yeah, he was always interested in building his own radios, which he did,
Mhm.
you know, all that stuff from a long time ago. And he was always explaining to me the physics of it, but, you know, it's a good thing he didn't test me because I don't think I would ever pass.
Well, I think he gave me my first little hi-fi set, which was a little tube amplifier and a little speaker and enclosure when I was really young.
And he
It was really...
and so so he had this thing about the wires, the very thin wires, and I think that would transmit sound or something like that. Another idea.
Was it
Before he met Robbins.
Was that the wire speakers or
What?
no? No, I'm
No,
probably
you-
thinking they were later, I think.
Wire speakers.
Wired, yeah, there was speakers that had wire, the really early speakers, before they had tape.
Oh, that's, you mean like a wire recorder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had one of
Wire
those too
recorders, too?
somewhere along.
Yeah.
Yeah, he built that, and my living room was filled with spirals of very thin wire.
Hmm.
Tremendous stuff. And he kept working on that, and then he
There's some reels of tape downstairs in your basement.
probably some of
Yeah,
that.
some things maybe recorded, large reels.
Yeah. And anyway, we did that, and he had a job with the Department of I think that's Transportation here, and then he was able to get a job with the Navy Yard as an engineer or draftsman, draftsman engineer, and he worked at the Navy Yard. And he made friends with longtime friends at the city, you know, the rail subway system. You know, they were doing the designs for the subway system and all that. That's what they worked on, and that's where he made a very good friend, Charlie Belle, who lived on Staten Island, one of the early settlers in Staten Island. His family was, and just a wonderful guy. And anyway, he got this job at the Navy Yard, which was really very nice, you know, steady job and all that. And I remember making meatloaf in the shape of a battleship, you know. At least I thought it looked like a battleship. So, and I remember he had a friend of his come with him home for lunch or dinner or something, and we had this beautiful battleship meatloaf. And then, as I say, I was always involved in political things. And the Navy Yard was making, and what's his face, that Herbert, the spy detector? What was his name?
What's,
That awful guy.
What-
oh, Edgar, J. Edgar.
Oh, J. Edgar Hoover?
He started this whole business with the FBI,
Mm-hmm.
inspecting all kinds of people from different organizations and so
Oh.
on. And we had a lady working for us, just doing cleaning, an Irish woman. Bertie, or I think her name was Bertie. Do you remember her
I
at all?
don't really remember her. The name is vaguely
A
familiar.
white-haired Irish lady, and she was very, very sweet, very nice. But I think the FBI came around and started asking questions from everybody, and I think somehow they got hold of her, and I guess she described our furnishings and all that. In my library, I had Karl Marx and Engels, all that stuff in the library, and I don't know whether they ever were in the house, but maybe she memorized them, and they asked her to tell what books I had, and she told them. And so one time they called him at the Navy Yard to come in for an interview. And so he went to that interview, and as he described it, he said, at one point he nearly fainted, and so they just brought him some water. And they said, "Are you protecting your wife?" You know, and he said, "I don't know anything about this." He said, "I have nothing to do with any of this. If you're talking about some of the things that my wife owns, I have nothing to do with that." And anyway, they fired him. And there he was without a job, and I was pregnant. So we were very unhappy, you know. And but Charlie Bale was very, very good. He said, "We've got a place for you to come back and work in the city," you know. So he did go back to work with him for a while, and all that. And then he realized he had to get a job, and he worked for the American Electric Company. They're a very big company out in the Midwest.
What did he do? Was he an engineer or?
Yeah, he was an engineer there. And he made a whole group of friends there who were very, very nice guys. Also engineers. And I remember once we were riding up to visit one of the people's, and they were so goyish, you know. When they, I remember their wives were very nice, but they were real housewifey ladies. And one lady she was telling me she was so thrilled about the Christmas present that her husband had got her. It was a sewing machine, you know, so anyway, you know, that's the sort of thing I mean. and we were driving up, one time we got arrested because they said we were driving too fast. I forget where it was, in New Jersey or someplace, where they were very strict, you know, and they tried it. Yeah, they took them to the local judge, and they got money out of them. They just fined them. That's their way of making money, you know. That's what they did. So at that time, Will felt that he really ought to try to do something on his own, you know. And he was always experimenting with the sound stuff. And I remember he was working for the American Electric Company, and he said that he wanted to go out on his own and become a semiconductor salesman or something like that. And at that time, Death of a Salesman was playing, and they said, "Have you seen that play?" And he said, "Yes, we have." And they said, "Aren't you scared?" He said, "No." And that was the time that he started working for some distributors, I think selling for them or something. And he was good at it, and it was doing well, you know. So that's how he went into this whole business. And then he got into the semiconductors business stuff. He learned about them, or he found whatever. And then he started working with Robbins on developing the small speaker, you know, because he was always interested. And that's how I think I lost my hearing. Because he had certain records that he played. Some he made them very loud, and some he brought down to where you could hardly hear a whisper, but you could hear the background music and so on. And so he was testing things all the time. He had different things, and he tested these speakers. And I was his ear. I had to listen to see which was a good one, which was, you know, different qualities. And so I did a lot of that, listening for him.
Yeah.
I remember there was one that was like a marching song, something to do with military music, which was loud and soft, loud and soft, and yeah, it had to have different gradations of stuff.
Was
And
it
then
like
he finally
like
developed
a
this
John
thing.
Philip Sousa march or something like
Probably something like
Yeah.
that. And well, you know, either that or the whatever. There's some operatic song that's whatever, and then I wanted to make small speakers to put in theaters, you know, so that they could have the small speaker at each side, and it would very, very good at projecting the sound, you know, for the audience to hear, even upstairs. And And that's what he was working at. And, you know, the Fisher, the guy, Avery Fisher.
Avery Fisher, sure.
And his wife were very, well, they were very wealthy people. And she came from a very wealthy family. They made chocolate. They made, and not just chocolate, but chocolate sauce.
Hmm.
You know, chocolate sauce that you use for making fudge and so on. And she had a secret family recipe for making fudge sauce. And I don't think I ever got the recipe, but I got lots of fudge sauce. And it was very good. And they were very friendly people. And finally, he offered Will $1,000 for the rights to the little speakers. And with $1,000 at that time was, you know, a lot of money. But I told you, when we went looking for homes, we wanted to buy a house in Queens, and it was such a lovely house with a special place for mother-in-law and all that. Because we wouldn't leave them, we figured we'd take them. You see, he came close to growing up in Queens.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and we, I told you, we asked everybody for money, you know what he would give us. All we wanted was $1,000, because that's all they needed for a deposit
So
on
what,
gorgeous homes.
so what happened with Fisher? What happened?
Oh, what happened with Fisher, that he offered them money, because they didn't know how to go about selling their product, neither of them. And they each wanted money, you know, rather than anything else. So he gave us, I guess they each got $1,000. And they got it in cash, which was so impressive. $1,000 bill. We were so excited when he got that. You know, we were so excited that we ran to one of our neighbors, you know, Rose
Goldberg?
what?
Rose Goldberg?
Rose Goldberg. We ran to her house, and I think her sister was visiting with her, because her sister lived in the building, and she was married to an obnoxious guy who was always degrading everything that wasn't his own. And we walked in, and we were flashing this $1,000 bill, you know. And I remember he was degrading it, you know. What's that, you know? But we were drooling, so we were very thrilled with that. And that's how he, you know, felt that stuff. And then he had
But
beautiful.
Fisher never really. I wonder what happened to the product. I don't recall
Well,
Fisher ever doing
used
it.
them. He used them, and they in Avery Fisher Hall, I think they used them.
Okay.
And I mean, I don't know where they are now. I suppose they are. I remember they were affixed to the either
So
side.
they were
of the-
installed at Avery Fisher
I
Hall.
believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were, you know, it was thrilling to have all that money.
Yeah.
And then he decided he was going to go into business for himself.
So this was before RJ started making consumer speakers. He had done a one-off
Right.
project
Uh-huh.
that
Right.
Avery Fisher somehow but Avery Fisher didn't want to market the RJ speaker.
I don't think so. He wasn't in that kind of a business at all. I don't know what his business was.
Well, he was making.
Did he make speakers at Fisher? Was he in the electronic?
Fisher eventually made speakers in the 1960s.
Oh, I think he must have given him the rights to the design or something.
Well, as far as what I've seen, the only other people who made something like that cabinet was Lafayette Radio. Lafayette had something they called the Elliptoflex, which was a copy of the RJ.
Because I remember he made a what did he call it? A bookcase speaker.
Yes, that's right. And this Lafayette is almost the same dimensions exactly,
Yeah.
and has that same thing where there's a space between the front baffle and the
And he
speaker.
made some friends in the speaker business. I mean, there's some guy that he still was in touch with. Very nice guy of whom we had a lot of respect, or towards whom we had a lot of respect. He worked in the speaker business. I don't remember his name.
Well, didn't he know Saul Morantz too?
Yeah, Morantz.
How did he know Saul Morantz, though? Do you know what the connection was? It just was somebody.
I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what
I think the speaker guy, maybe you're thinking, was Marty Gersten. Could it be?
Marty Gersten, I know we got to be very good friends with him. He was funny. I remember one time we went out with him and his wife. It wasn't really his wife. It was they had a very strange relationship there. He had a wife and he had this other lady. And we went out with them, and she was very fat. Well, Marty was kind of round himself, but it was in the winter, and she was wearing a black winter coat, I guess. But she, she carried herself, and she had a big belly in front of her. So I asked her what month she was in. I could have bitten my tongue because she was not pregnant. She was just fat. Mm-hmm. And anyway, I remember we went out, we went to the theater and all that kind of stuff. That was the time when you took your customers out or your friends out and all that.
I guess O might have been a customer of Willie's because he was representing
Yeah, well, Monty was
speaker elements.
He was busy with I think the city radio stuff from a long time ago.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was involved with them, with the loudspeaker, not just loudspeakers, with the broadcast stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He worked with some people who broadcast the stuff, like NYU, NYC,
NYC.
something like that, the market. And he had all kinds of money from other stuff. And his wife, he had children, I think, and then he had this other lady who worked with him, for him. I think she was the secretary or something. And I forget, there were all kinds of things. She had a big fur coat from a different, I don't know who, somebody that they knew. And he got her a big fur coat, cover her up. And they had, I think they had a child too. So we had both those children.
Right.
And,
Oh, you used to have a friend named Yoko.
Yoko was my Japanese friend.
Yeah. How did you meet her?
How did I meet her?
Yeah.
Well, after I graduated from school and all that, and I forget what year. No, after I had a job and all that stuff, and Rose Friedman and I were very good friends at the time, and we were both looking for things to do after school. We went to Chinatown and took I think there was a UFT used to offer various courses after school, and we took a course in Chinese cooking. We went downtown to Chinatown and we joined this class, and it was wonderful. They took us to shops where we took Chinese supply stops, and we learned about the Chinese woks and all that, and where to buy things and what they do and so forth. And I collected some very good recipes. I have a very good recipe for shrimp. And it was kind of a complicated thing and big. That's why I bought a big wok. I remember having people over for New Year's or something, and we sat here and we put another table in there, and a children's table. I think Bruce was married then. He had Alyssa with him, and she sat with the kids. And whatever. Anyway, we had this. I remember we had Will's doctor and his wife, and his kids here, and that's how I know Helen Mandelbaum. And this doctor was a very interesting guy. He had more money than God, and so did she, because they both came from long lines of doctors who were usually pretty wealthy, and he wanted to invest his money. He said he had heard about investing in the stock market, and so he did. He invested. I guess he made more money, but he said all he had to show for it were pieces of paper, the stock certificates. And he said he wanted something he could enjoy that involved him in doing things, because I think he was retiring or something. And he was as nice as could be to Mom. He was so nice to her before she got really sick, And because I took her to his office for an examination. And anyway, he and Helen, decided that they would look for art things, something that they could have and hold and appreciate. And they have a collection now that is worth millions of dollars. They have original everything that you can think of. I remember when we went to their house for dinner one time, and Will had to be careful where he sat because there was a calder hanging right behind him, and he sort of jiggled it when he moved his chair back. So it was really a very beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And he became ill, unfortunately. He had a cancer that was inoperable, and he refused to have any company. He didn't want to see anybody or talk to them, or get any of their sympathy, nothing. And he just sat there until he died, that's all.
Mm-hmm.
And then she was left with all that stuff. They lived in downtown Brooklyn Heights, in a beautiful place that belonged to that very flamboyant guy. Oh, I forget his name. He had 1 million wives, and he was always getting into fights at social events.
You're not talking about Donald Trump.
But who?
You're not talking about Donald Trump.
No.
No,
No.
no,
He
he
had
was in
nothing,
Brooklyn.
Earlier-
he had
earlier
nothing to
time.
do with art or anything.
Oh, this is an art
Art guy.
guy, huh?
Yeah.
With
He was
million wives.
a very flamboyant guy, and not an artist himself, but a big collector, and he owned a building in downtown Brooklyn, and they were one of his tenants.
Oh, okay.
That's where they lived. And,
Wow.
and he
Skull,
got,
Skull would know who that would be.
what's his name?
Well,
What?
Jonathan would know. Jonathan Skull, because his parents were
Art
mom and pop art, the
Uh-huh.
Skulls, and they were involved in that. So if I ask him,
He
he
was
might
a
remember the
very
name.
flamboyant
Might know
guy.
some.
His name was in the papers all the time because he started fights. He used to get drunk and start fights with people
Uh-huh.
in social settings and so on.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
I can think of who did that, this woman
So
there.
they finally moved from there,
Uh-huh.
and they moved to a place on, well, I think that's where he died. And then they moved to a place on the east side, about 40, forget what, I have their address.
Yeah.
And that's where they lived. And she, and then one of their old friends, like somebody who worked with Andy Warhol at his studio,
Uh-huh.
who did photography, I think. And he said he fell in love with Helen, and he wanted to marry her, and so he did. But he brought her so many stories of things that went on in Warhol's place, all that. But he helped her with her collection of stuff. I remember when she moved to this apartment in Manhattan, they all had to be packaged very well and all that.
Sure.
And she had a whole collection there. I once took Dorothy to her apartment to see all the lovely things. It was like walking into an art gallery. She had so many wonderful things.
Talking about Dorothy Joseph.
Yeah. And then she finally, I kept in touch with her. She and her daughter, they had a daughter and a son. The son was a writer for, the theater things that you get when you
The playbill?
Playbill. He always wrote the stuff about the theater, he was very knowledgeable about theater. Ever since he was a kid, he loved musical theater particularly. And they always went to the theater a lot. And so he immersed himself in that. And he, what's his name? It has to be, anyway. I don't have any theater bills. Dorothy used to collect every theater bill she ever had.
All right. Well, you were going to talk about Yoko.
Oh,
How you met
Yoko.
Yes.
Well,
that's-
after we were finished with school and all that, so I said Rose Friedman and I used to take different courses, and look for things to do,
Right.
and so she read about some place called the International House in Manhattan, and I think on 58th Street or something, and so And there we were given, they interviewed us and so on, and then they paired us with students from other countries, not students, but people from other countries who spoke English and who understood English, but they needed stuff like idiomatic expressions and more ease of speaking and understanding and so on, and customs and so forth. And many of them were women whose husbands had come here on business and their wives had nothing to do, so they came here to be hone their skills and so on. So I met several Japanese ladies there, and we were each assigned one to work with. And also that's where we met Anahit,
Right.
my
yes.
Romanian friend, who she was wonderful. She spoke French and Romanian, and she had such stories to tell about escaping from Turkey and so forth. And
She's the one that
Yeah.
met us when we were in
she
Istanbul.
was a wonderful cook,
Mm.
and she
Helped
used to
me
make.
buy,
I still remember she used to make decorations with little, the apple seeds, black apple seeds.
Yes.
She used to cut them, just put a couple of lines in them, and they got to look like little mice. It was so cute. At least you remember. But she was a very sweet lady, and also and they assigned one person to each of us to work with, and my assignment was Yoko. And Rose's assignment was, I think Rose's assignment was Anahit, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. that's-
Yeah. So that's how, I got to speak to Yoko, and her husband was the manager of the, what's that name, where they slice the meat and all that.
They sliced meat?
Yeah, the Japanese
Restaurant?
restaurants. What did you call it?
Well, it's like a Japanese steakhouse or
Yes,
like a sushi
yeah.
place?
They had a chain.
Yokohama.
Oh, Benihana?
That's right, yeah.
Oh, Benihana.
And her husband was sent here, well, she came to this country because her husband was sent here as the manager of all of Benihana things here.
Mhm.
And he had also been in Canada to start a whole bunch there. And then he came here, and they put him in charge of establishing them. And they were in many different places. There was one all the way going upstate someplace. And then they had the one on 50-something Street in Manhattan. And so she took us there to have lunch there, and he was very gracious and very nice. But his hours were terrible. His hours were awful. And she was very lonely. She even got, I think, a dog. She got a little dachshund dog to keep her company in the apartment. And he would come home very, very late, like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So she was very lonely. And they used to hand out tickets, free tickets from the various theaters and so on, passes to various concerts and things at the International House. And they'd hand them out, and we'd take them, and we'd go together, the 4 of us, Yoko and me and Rose Rose Friedman and Anahit. And Pearl joined us sometime, remember?
Occasionally, yeah.
And we used to have a meeting together at Christmas time. Will treated us to either a lunch or a tea or something, to an elegant place that we chose. And we got to have regular English tea and things like that. And it was very nice. We were very good friends. We visited each other's homes and so forth. And
Doesn't she have a restaurant now in Japan? I think
well,
you mentioned
now
that.
their aim was to. He fell in love with Italian cooking, and that's what he wanted to study in America. He had enough of Japanese cooking, and she divorced her first husband because after a while she couldn't stand the hours, and she felt he was really cruel to her. He didn't care that she was alone so much and all that. And she tried to get a job, and she did get a job as a secretary and so on. And I remember she wanted to know one of her bosses wanted her to bring him coffee and something from Dunkin' Donuts. And she said to me, how do I say, she said, what's the difference between this and that? She said, if I want this cookie or that cookie, or that donut or that. And so we try to explain the difference between this and that. I don't know how you do that, but and of course she wanted to be correct when she asked for something. Or what else did she say? Something about in the office, things that that you talk about. So I try to help her with that. But otherwise, her English really improved, and she spoke quite well, didn't she?
Yes, oh yes.
And then her second husband, this guy that she married, was a very sweet guy, and he was a very good cook. She met him at the, across the street from Carnegie Hall. There's a big Japanese place that's mainly for Japanese businessmen. They go to that place especially. It's all Japanese cooking and so on. And he was a cook there. He was a very good cook. And he was working there and all that. And then they really both wanted to be occupied. And his dream was to have a restaurant of his own. So they opened this restaurant, and as I say, he took a course in Italian cooking, because that really delighted him for some reason. It was so different from Japanese cooking. And they were looking for a name, and I remember I helped them think of a name, Pasta Supreme, called it. And it was right across the street from the guy who put on the programs in the park.
Oh,
Shakespeare in the Park.
from the
What's his name?
The theater, yes.
Joseph Pack is
It was
That's
the
right,
Pack
Joseph
there.
Pack.
Yeah.
And he took an
Yeah.
interest in the restaurant.
On
He
Lafayette
went
Street.
across the street, and he
Right
brought
across.
posters from his shows and stuff,
Mhm.
and he decorated their restaurant, and he ordered platters of pasta to feed his cast every so often. He got the stuff, and they all feasted on this pasta, and they really liked it. I remember she had a manager who had a recipe for tiramisu that was absolutely wonderful. So Yoko used to make the tiramisu, and he worked so hard because he wanted everything to be very fresh and very good. And he used to go marketing for it himself down to Chinatown to get all the stuff that he needed. And then he'd come and they'd have their lunch period, and then he would take a nap, and then go down and do more shopping and stuff and have stuff in there. And they were really a very successful restaurant. The Blue Man Group, did you ever take the boys to see that?
Yes.
Oh yeah, wasn't that fun? They're still in business,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And she could have stayed there forever because they had a lot of business, and there was also a very elegant restaurant right next to them, Indochine.
Mhm.
Have you ever been there? Really very elegant restaurant.
I think maybe
Very
once.
expensive.
Yeah, I'm not sure how Abby would remember.
I think it's still there. And so she worked very hard in the restaurant. And we used to have some Women's League functions there,
Mhm.
We'd have a whole table full of people, and she served them. And then I remember I took Alan there. And I think
I
Bruce.
think their landlord raised the rents.
Yeah, well, aside from the fact from that, they were willing to stay and do this. His main feeling was that he would take the skills of Italian cooking back to Japan,
Mm.
because that was something different in Japan. But what happened was that they had so many robberies, a lot of robberies, and every time they had one, they reported to the police, and finally the police said, "We give you a license for having a gun," and that scared him. He didn't want to have a gun. He didn't want to have to cope with anything like that, and he just didn't want. He showed me the permit and all that because he had things to fill out. He was a doll. He was just such a nice guy. And they came and cooked for me here one time, several times. It was just wonderful food.
Wow.
So I tried to persuade them to come to Florida to cook there. Anyway, but she had a mother. She didn't have a father. And she was the only child. And her mother was getting old, and she felt that she had to go back and take care of her mother. He had also a one-parent family, and she was also, and she had a farm. She had a little farm, and he felt that he had to go home and take that responsibility on too. And at the same time, they hoped they could open a pizza place, something new in Japan. So that's what they did. They went back to Tokyo. I remember getting her a gift. I got her a, what's that, the pick,
Water pick?
water pick as a gift, because she was very interested in having good teeth, you know, and she used it. Will used it also. She loved it. And I got one on 13th Avenue in that special bargain place, and got that for her as a gift, going away gift. And she loved it, and she sent me pictures all the time. I think I still have pictures of her garden. And she loved animals. Oh, she had, remember about her sparrows, her little birds?
Yeah, they weren't sparrows.
There was a sparrow that was lost, and she took it. She was very gentle with them, and she introduced herself to the sparrow, and she talked to it, and she put it in a cage, and she said that she hopes he didn't mind being in a cage, and she got him a mate, and she was hoping for eggs, and she told them, she said, when you have eggs, I remember her telling me this, when you have eggs, I want to take care of them. I will take very good care of them. I will keep them warm so you don't have to sit on them, and I will hatch them and take very good care of them. And that's what she did. She actually took the first eggs that they produced, and she kept them in a warm place, and she had these birds sitting on her shoulders, flying around with her, you know. It was lovely. And she had this cocker spaniel, I think, or dachshund, I think. And she had cats. She had beautiful cats and the dogs. And then she had a Mr. and Mrs. Peacock. She had in Japan. And she had, and when she lived here in Queens, she had a basement apartment. And so she opened the back door, and she had made a little garden there right outside, remember?
Yeah, I remember that. She had a beautiful garden.
And,
She had birds then, too.
And I remember we went together to the museum, to the, what's his name, museum, in Queens. There's a very
The
famous...
Gucci
Oh,
Museum.
the Noguchi Museum?
Yes. The Gucci?
Is it Noguchi's?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Gucci Museum.
Yeah.
Where they had an outdoor showing of his statuary.
Right.
And we went there and we loved it.
Mhm.
And we have pictures of Dorothy and she there at the museum. And then, so they went back to Japan, and they lived there, and they sent us pictures all the time of their garden, their farm. They really grew a farm, and they made part of a living by growing exotic vegetables that they sold to the fancy supermarkets there. And that, and some flowers, I think, so that. And then they decided to make a little restaurant near where workers come in the morning, and it was all pasta. And that was a different, different thing for them. And that's what they were doing. They're still doing it, I think, as far as I know.
And that's in Tokyo?
Yeah. And I think she was ill for a while. She had a stroke.
Oh.
And the doctor told her not to work,
Yes,
not
I
to
didn't
work
hear.
so hard. Huh?
I didn't hear about that.
That was some years ago.
Yeah. What happened to the apple you used to have around?
What?
You have an apple around
In
here? Where is it?
the other room, but
Oh.
she didn't paint
She didn't
that.
do that.
That was the
Who
other
did that?
lady who
Yeah.
painted.
Do you remember the name of that other lady?
Yeah, I still correspond with her.
Oh, right,
Uh,
that's the one you correspond.
I met other Japanese ladies. There was one who was a really lovely lady who, she had a son a baby. Her husband was I think he was a chemist, or professor of chemistry, and he taught, he came here on a teaching assignment he was invited to come and be at Columbia Presbyterian, I believe. And they had this tiny baby, and I remember we came to their home up near Columbia Presbyterian to have dinner, and she was going to cook the things that her mother-in-law taught her to cook, and we had a very good meal there. And he was talking to Will and me. He said about, I find that the doctors here are all Jewish. He said, and they're wonderful. They saved my baby's life. Because his baby had some sort of thing with his stomach, and it was a very delicate sort of operation or whatever, and they brought him through alive and well. And I still correspond with that lady, and she has, and this son grew up and he has children of his own. And anyway, so we went, so we got to know quite a bunch of Japanese ladies.
And you'll have to take a look at the picture.
Yeah, okay. I remember the birds that when you were sick, that she had folded origami birds. That was
Oh
Yoko.
yeah, well she made me all those origami
There they
things.
are.
When Will was ill,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah.
I remember she came to the house all the way from Queens by subway,
Yeah.
and she carried this big bag, big plastic clothing bag, I guess you feel. And she had this thing on the hanger of 1,000 cranes
That's
she
right.
made. And she said, that's what we make if there's anybody seriously ill. You make 1,000 cranes for long life. And so she came in, and Will was lying on the couch, and because he had just had his heart surgery, and she came in with this big bag, and she bowed, and she presented him with this thing, and then she didn't even stay. She gave him the thing, and we hung it up, and she left. And then the same thing happened when I had my tongue operation. She came to the hospital, and she came in very seriously with this 1,000 cranes, and she stood at the entrance to my room, and she bowed, and she presented me with this thing of 1,000 cranes. So it was lovely. So I have one also.
So now you got 2,000.
Hmm?
Now you have 2,000.
That's why I'm living.
That's right.
That's right.
You got protection. Yeah, that really.
She was really very affectionate, very nice, lovely. And when she was recovering from her divorce, because she was very unhappy at the time, her friends all helped her, and she even got help over the telephone from some person who she had heard of, somebody who could talk over the telephone and help heal you.
Right, yeah.
And that's what she did. And they told her, and they made her eat. She had no appetite, she had lost weight, and they made her eat raw liver. They said she had to eat raw liver. So she did. And they really pulled her through. She was wonderful.
It's right up there with the castor oil. You had castor oil, she had liver.
Yeah. She never had any children. And anyway.
All right. Well, I think that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should probably get back to Long Island before it closes.
Yeah,
Right.
before Long Island closes.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll roll up the LIE.
Yeah.
Oh, and you want to go see the fig tree?
I think Abby went and looked.
Oh, she didn't.
She did.
Did she see anything that she wanted?
I
I don't think she
I don't
would
think
take
so.
any.
No, she didn't take any.
Well, she could take two.
Yeah.
Because
We're
we'll
gonna
have
wait
more
for
during
ours. Ours
summer.
has got
What?
one, and I think maybe he'll work on a second.
What?
He said he'll wait for his one.
Yeah. Well, we have one.
Well, see if you can pick one now. I'm sure we'll have many more.
Well, maybe another time.
When are you coming again? Probably never after Pearl goes home.
No, I thought we would come back out because if you would like, I can come back out on a Sunday like today.
Okay, sure.
You know, I kind of enjoy hearing a lot of these stories I haven't heard before.
Well,
You know, and,
if you don't have enough, I can make some up.
that's fine. That's good too. They don't have to be true stories.
Pearl will show you where the apple picture is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go.
That was Mrs. Gutto who did that.
That's right. I couldn't remember her